Well, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment. It's April the 17th, 2023. And our first order of business is the land acknowledgement, and Nancy Darlington Smith is going to read that today. You need to turn your mic on, Nancy.
Good evening. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand that this land holds an immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and we appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for their contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledge the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. There's a sharing moment here. So I'd like to share that as an educator, I was fortunate to be part of an SDSS school community that became a Downey Wenjack Fund school, whose goal is to empower and engage students to raise awareness through reconciliation, such as Reconciliation Hall at SDSS, which we invite you to visit. And I would also encourage consideration of reading the Truth and Reconciliation's final summary. It is an inclusive report. As a local government and public organization, we're dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture to foster a better relationship with First Nations and their people. And we commit ourselves to these actions that move us forward along a path to healing with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you, Nancy. At this point, if anyone needs to declare a pecuniary interest, that's possible, or you can declare throughout the meeting. Seeing none. Our next order of business is the adoption of the minutes from the Committee of Adjustment meeting from March the 20th, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder?
So moved. Yeah.
Moved by.
Sorry, before we do that, I just have one thing about the minutes from last month.
Well, I'm just going to get it moved and seconded, then we can have a discussion.
Okay.
Okay. So moved by Deputy Mayor Mike Myatt, a seconder. Chad Zimmerman. Okay. Are there any comments or questions about the minutes, Richard?
Yes, sorry. It's just a small thing. My name is not spelled correctly on it. It's written Bennett and it's my last name's Beckett. So I think it's one of the things that was moved. The treasurer, I think. That's not my last name on there.
I think we can get that corrected. I'm
okay.
Looking across at the secretary. It was her first set of minutes, so I think she'll commit to memory now that you're a Beckett, not a Bennett.
Yes.
Are there any other comments or questions? Any concerns about the minutes? Okay, seeing no further comments, all those in favor? And that carries. Chad, I'm really having a hard time. Oh, it's the light behind you. It's like you have a halo over your head. There you are now. Okay. I just couldn't see if your hand went up or not. We don't have any additional business. Except, I will take advantage of this to say this. It's just been brought to my attention. Our member, Michael Martin, is not here tonight. He did send in his regrets. Just want to remind everybody, if you're not able to attend a meeting, please forward your regrets for attending or for being unable to attend the meeting to Jay Posner, Dana Mitchell, and me, if you'd like to include me too. Just if you can get that in advance, that's very much appreciated, so that we know for sure that we'll have a quorum, first of all, but second of all, that we don't wonder what's happened to you. Anyway, we have item 6 on the agenda is 3 public hearings. The first one is a minor variance application A-87. The name on the file is Spalling. The address is 11 Fenton Drive. And as an initial part for the public hearing, I will ask the planner, Karina Smith, to make the report.
Thank you. Good evening to the committee. I'm just going to ask if Jay might be able to share his slide.
Bear with me. That was what I forgot.
So, excuse me, we're having a bit of trouble
just found out that on YouTube, it's not showing the full meeting. So if you bear with me for 1 minute, I'm gonna see if I can get that fixed.
Morgan, can you let us know when the technical issue's been cleared up?
Yes, I will. We can see the presentation, so I think it's okay if you continue on with the presentation. And while you're doing that, I'll try to figure out what's going on.
Okay, so again, we have 3 public hearings tonight, and the purpose of the public meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. So the first one, again, is minor variance application A-087, and the applicant is Charles. The applicants are Charles and Lori Spalling, and the address is 11 Fenton Drive. And again, I'll ask the planner to make the report.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So I am presenting today on behalf of my colleague Jillian Smith. As noted, it is a minor variance application at 11 Fenton Drive. You can see the property and the surrounding area on the air photo. Next slide. The purpose of the application is to allow for a reduced setback for a driveway that would be reduced from 1 meter to 0.25 meters. Next slide, please. You can see the existing home as well as the existing driveway on the site plan. In red is the reduced setback. And the reason for the change is that the property lines are not entirely perpendicular to the road. And so they do skew. And so at the closest point of the driveway, there is a request to reduce that setback as noted to 0.25 meters. Next slide. So we've included some photos in the presentation today. This is looking at the front of the home towards the setback. Next slide. And we do have a couple of additional photos, which include angles from both the south and the north side of the property. This is taken from the south and this is from the north. So staff did review the application in the context of the 4 tests for the minor variance. We did conclude that it does satisfy the 4 tests, more specifically as it relates to the driveway reduction and the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Typically, the setback for a driveway is to allow for access in and out of vehicles from the driveway so that it would be wholly on the applicant's property, as well as to allow for snow storage. And there is opportunity on this site to allow for access and for snow storage, either on that side yard or on the front portion of the property. The applicant also does have a door at the side of their garage, which also required access to the side in this particular location. Next slide. So we did circulate this out as per the requirements under the Planning Act. We did receive comments back from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, the town, Historic Saugeen Métis, and from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Environment Office did identify the need for an archaeological assessment, which will be completed by the applicant as a condition and is included on the decision sheet. We did not receive any public comments at the time the agenda was posted on this particular application. Next slide. So just to recap, the applicant is seeking a minor variance to reduce the interior side yard for their driveway from 1 meter to 0.25 meters. And this would allow for the driveway as it currently exists. We are recommending approval of the application subject to the conditions on the decision sheet. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I believe that we have a representative of the applicants on the Zoom. Mr. Cobain, would you like to speak?
Good evening. Yes, I'll keep it brief. The applicants reviewed the planning report prior to tonight's meeting, and I guess for the record, they're supportive of it too, of the final decision. And they have, I can report that they have retained a archaeologist to complete that archaeological assessment. We have been in contact with Saugeen about it too, just the requirements for it. So they will complete, or I guess the archaeological consultant will complete their work. Normally they have to wait until the snow is gone, and I guess all the snow is now gone, and just schedule that work in for the spring, probably later in the spring to see in the queue. But I can confirm that they have retained an archaeologist to complete the report for the property. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cobain. I don't believe there's any members of the public who wish to speak, but is there anybody? You don't think anybody's- Okay, I'll now open it up to the committee. Councillor Stack.
Thanks. Just a couple of maybe quick questions I didn't get a chance to ask. So when the property was purchased, would they not have had to perform an archaeological assessment? I'm just surprised they have to do it post-purchase. Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So on this particular site, when they applied for a building permit, that doesn't necessarily trigger the requirement for an archaeological assessment. It was only through the planning process that it was circulated to the First Nations, and the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation had identified the need for that assessment. And I guess one more follow-up question. So if the assessment is performed and there is something significant, I take it the remediation required would just be for ripping out the part of the driveway that extends past the setback? Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Typically, it depends on what the recommendations of that report are. So if there are artifacts or other things found during that assessment, it depends on what that is. It may be keeping those in sight on the property and providing a buffer to that. It may be that whatever artifacts are found could be removed and presented to the First Nation. There's various options and recommendations that we have seen coming out of the report.
Member Zimmerman.
To the chair, I'm just trying to understand a little bit better. I think early on it said that it had been marked correctly, and then when the cement was poured, it was encroaching. From the pictures, it seems like if there was another 0.75 meters, it would be awful close to that door. And then when I read on page 13 of tonight's package, the first paragraph under does the variance maintain the intent and purpose, it talks about providing access to a side door adjacent to the dwelling. Can I just get confirmation if this was an error by the cement company or if it was an intended to be that way for access, please?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that it was an error through the pouring of the cement, and that the even though there is a door on the side of the residence, that was not the reason for this request. But perhaps Steve Cobain may have some additional information in that regard.
Mr. Cobain, would you like to comment?
Sure. Yes, I can confirm it was an error on the concrete contractor. The day that it was being poured, Mr. Spalding could not attend the site and couldn't provide directions to the contractor. And unfortunately, that's where the driveway ended up. Normally we would, for any subdivision or driveways in the subdivisions that we do, we would probably narrow it. Well, we have narrowed it in to meet the 1 meter setback, and then you could flare it out as you drive up past the property or the town road allowance property line, and flare the driveway out, and that's how you would get into the side door of the garage. But again, in this case, this is simply an error. I would like to add, actually, I forgot to mention that the Spaldings have been, did talk with their neighbors, next door neighbors to the north on the weekend, and they're generally in favor of this request too. So I'd just like to add that for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything further, Chad?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And it would appear to me with that door, by increasing the space of the driveway, that it was meant to be, but we can debate that forever. But I think from looking at the photo, it was meant to be poured that way. But having said that, I think this is minor in nature. We're going from 1 meter to 0.25. Neighbors have said they're not really having a problem with it. So I will support this, but I would question whether it was an error or not, but I'll accept that. But I think that space is required to open up that door. Anyways, that hedge, the question I have, Karina, the privet hedge, is that right on the property line? I guess it would be if it's only like one foot, 1.5 foot. Is that hedge right on the property line then?
My understanding is that that's correct.
That right, Steve?
Yes, it is.
Right on the property line?
Yep.
The car doors are going to be opening up onto the privet hedge, and they're car doors, so I mean, I have no problem with this one.
Any other members? I had a question. I'm not too sure who we should go to, but there is a very specific reference in the report about snow removal and the ability to do snow storage on the other side, not the side where the privet hedge is that divides property from the north. There's no issues at all related to a solid surface of concrete and drainage associated with the neighbor to the north. Has that been taken into account?
My understanding is that drainage is not an issue. Perhaps if the town had further comment on that, but I understand they had issued approvals for this.
Thank you, Karina. Anything further on this application?
Deputy Mayor, I'm
Yes,
still having a bit of technical difficulty, so I'm going to stop the recording and restart it, and I'll let you know in just a second, okay?